I call the June 29th, 2020 board meeting to order. We have a quorum present with all members except for Mrs. Lake, and she's on her way. She will be here shortly. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairman, I would like to make two amendments. First of all, under staff reports, under Ms. Dowd, I add an item number 2 to read CARES Act Funding Award. Item number 2, CARES Act Funding Award. And then also, I'd like to amend under executive session contractual considerations, add Gallman Elementary School water damage and athletic facilities. That's under contractual considerations, Gallman Elementary water damage and athletic facilities. And that's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All right, Mr. Ham, if you would lead us in an invocation, please.
Would you pray with me, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to serve you in the capacity of board members here in the school district of Newberry County. We just thank you for the blessing of each child, each staff member, and all the parents that we serve. We ask you to be with us now, especially in this difficult time with the COVID-19, that you give us wisdom to make the correct decisions to protect as many people as possible. We just ask all these things in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
And I would like to welcome everyone here and welcome our media that are joining us online. And if without any objection, the minutes of the May 18th, 2020 board meetings minutes will be approved. Oh, I did. Thank you. All right, let's back up. I apologize. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Ms. Dowd, if you would, with our consent agenda, please.
As I do every time, about this time each year, I bring to you a list of budget transfers, and this is because our board policy DBJ establishes the basic structure for letting you know if we've got some changes just within the general fund accounts, that those that might need to have a different supply need or some different need in one of their accounts, they might request that budget, some of that budget be moved to another account. And these are just those transactions that we do throughout the year. The bottom line general fund budget does not change with these transactions, but we do provide them for you to have for your information.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we move to our staff reports, and Ms. Dowd with our finance reports.
Okay, the cash flow report is provided in your board packets, and the prior month's ending balance was $25 million. Deposits for May were $5.7 million, and claims of $5.4 million for an ending balance May 31st, 2020 of $25.4 million. On the following page, this is broken down by fund. General fund, $16.1 million. Federal projects, $4.8 million. EIA funds, $3.9 million, and other state restricted funds, $822,000 for an ending balance May 31st of $25.4 million. The following pages show our cash flow for the technology and construction funds. The ending balance for May was $740,000. We did have expenditures in the amount of $2,568. They were for some storage ramps that we provided during our graduations that made our I guess, the stages be more ADA compliant, and we purchased those from Lorick for $2,568. And the following pages are going to just be our general fund revenue and expenditure reports for your information.
Ms. Dowd, is that the primary expense for the graduation this year, or are there some other things like the videos and stuff? Have we seen any numbers on any of that yet, like the overall cost for graduation?
We did have other expenditures. We did have the videos, and we had the actual rental of the stages and things like that. I would like to tell you I have that in this folder, but I left that report with Miss Bowers before I came in so that she could do some claims that got to be sent in, because those actual expenditures are being paid for out of our COVID funding.
Out of the CARES Act?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm about to give you a little bit of more general information on.
I'll ask you one more real quick question. On local revenue at the end of May, we're about $300,000 short, but on the cash flow we showed, I thought, an unusually high amount in monthly taxes. Do you feel like where we are here at the end of June that we're going to be okay on this?
Well, we have one more month, June, and we will not get that information until next month, and we are a little bit low yet. It looked like we were around $265,000 meeting the actual budgeted amount in actual current operations for real estate and vehicles with those two combined. We are very close to that amount. We definitely are not going to have what we normally would have as far as additional funding locally this time.
I saw that. I guess my question was, how does that monthly taxes on the cash flow, which says June the 12th, translate into June the 30th receipts? Is there any correlation?
Where are you looking?
On the cash flow, the first sheet you show us, it's like from the Treasurer's Office, the cash flow, and the date on it's June the 12th. And
that's just the date that this was printed.
Okay. Well,
What you're seeing is actually through May the 31st.
okay. And the last line says $888,000 in monthly taxes. And just on the last 2 months, it's always been under $300,000. Does that seem high?
Well, we had delinquent, we had revenue in lieu, and then we also got in some other, I believe we got some manufacturer's depreciation in down there at the bottom. So we've got local revenue totals up there, and probably more than likely with that, I'm sure that 888 is also including the actual manufacturer's depreciation that we received down there. It's actual account number 100-003-840.
Okay.
And that's $364,000 right there.
I see that. Okay.
So if you take that 522 and the 364, that's getting you right at your 888.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions?
Okay.
All right.
All right. CARES Act funding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We received our application for the CARES Act funding, and we had quite a short turnaround for that, but we were able to meet as a group with all of our departments included, and the total was $1.7 million, actually $1,720,467. And as I've mentioned, or as Mr. Sugar has mentioned to you before, we have 12 buckets that we could have.
What was that total again?
Oh, I'm sorry. $1,720,467.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
Okay. So for the application process, we had a summary that we had to give them, and we had to actually tell them out of the 12 possible uses of the funds where we wanted to budget those funds. And where we chose to budget them was actually 4 of the 12 buckets. And the first one was actually the provisions for principals and other school leaders. A total of $153,899 is budgeted there. And the description of activities that we provided to them is to provide personal protective equipment to each school in the district, and to provide PPE, which is personal protective equipment, to each staff member, as well as the purchase of items and services needed to assist each high school to move graduations from inside to outside in order to social distance. We had purchase services that we budgeted there and supplies and materials. The purchase services was actually rental of the stages and things that we had to actually rent to be able to have the graduations, or either we had to actually purchase some deep cleaning. We paid a company to come in and do some deep cleaning during all of our time that we were out. So the total that we've put in that bucket is $153,899. The next category that we went to was the sanitation services and supplies. And basically, this is for the purchase of cleaning and sanitation products for each school in the district. Some of that is actual purchase services because we had to actually purchase. And let me just also say, this is anticipated expenditures for the most part. Only about $90,000 of it is what we actually spent from the period of when this started in March till the end of June the 30th. So the majority of this is our anticipated expenditures.
And what is this figure on number 2, sanitation?
For sanitation, the total is $180,525.
So we had deep cleaning and then sanitation.
Yes.
I'm just going to be silly and ask what deep cleaning and sanitation is the same.
Okay, yeah. Well, deep cleaning could be that we get someone to come in and clean, but the majority of it is the purchase of the machines that we can use here on site. Then those are relatively expensive. So, and that and the other supplies that we're going to have for that deep cleaning.
So the deep cleaning was a company to come in and do it. Sanitation is, I'm assuming we purchased some stuff?
Well, either way, we can do the deep cleaning, but you got to have those big machines in order to do the deep cleaning. So that would be a supply type thing.
But I just remember us approving purchase of some machines.
You did. Let me, if you will. Those machines are. We still don't have the first one that we ordered yet.
Oh, okay.
We ordered a total.
I just.
If you remember, we came to you twice, but in total we ordered 15 of those Clorox 360 machines.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were told about 2 weeks ago that we ought to be getting the first one in the next week and a half to 2 weeks, 3 more by the middle of August, and from that point in time they didn't know how long it was going to be before we got the rest of them. What we also have ordered is a machine, and this is also electro hydrate machine that we've got a 1 gallon and a 2 gallon because the machine, those 360 machines, they've got the pulls. You got to plug them in. It's electric. You got to plug them in, and when you move them from room to room, it's cumbersome. They're good for your deep cleaning and getting it done in a hurry. But as far as us coming into one classroom or going into a weight room for athletics, going into the front office every hour and spraying, we ordered 1 gallon and 2 gallon packs. One of them is a pistol type shooter. That's what about everybody in the business is using. That's what the State Department is buying for us to use on buses, is my understanding. And then there's a 2 gallon, which is a backpack. All of those have lithium batteries. We don't have to plug them in. We can walk from one room to the other. So those are ordered as well, and those were ordered about a week and a half ago, and they are supposed to be here in the next 3 weeks, according to what we've been told. So what we're trying to do is get as much disinfecting apparatus and disinfectant solution before we do start back to school. Because right now we can go to one school and do some work, but as far as us being able to have kids in a building every day and do the disinfecting that this document that the CDC, DHEC, and the State Department have put out is going to be ongoing every single day, and that's what we're still waiting on. And we're in the same boat. I've talked to superintendents over and over. We've had multiple phone calls with the State Department. Everybody's in the same boat because everybody in this country has ordered the same type of materials, and they can't produce it fast enough. So that's a challenge for everybody in this country right now. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Okay. The next category that we put really a very much larger share of funding into is the purchase of educational technology. as you all know, that there is a high likelihood that we are not going to learn in the usual way, and have not been learning in the usual way since all of this began. And regardless of whether we do come back into the regular classroom, there are going to be needs for distance learning and online learning, because we are going to have times where the students are going to be at home, and not everybody. We want everybody to have a device, and we have been told by the Department of Education that needs to be a high priority. So therefore, we are planning to purchase and have already submitted purchase orders to purchase additional devices, including iPads, laptops, cases, and carts to receive instruction and complete assignments at home or in areas that are outside of the classroom setting. The total for those supplies and materials is $526,709. In addition, we knew that our teachers were going to need to have a good platform to be able to do online teaching. And for that reason, we, as districts are all over the state, are actually going to purchase a learning management system so that we do have a better platform for our teachers to be able to instruct from home. And that's $55,000.
And Ms. Dowd, if I might add something, depending upon the learning management system that the State Department ends up choosing, they're looking at 2 or 3 different LMSs according to what we're being told. If they choose the one that we are planning on using, they will fund, according on paper, they're going to fund from their CARES Act money the school districts that use that system for 1 year. After the first year, they will ask for more appropriations from the legislature, but we may be on our own the second year. But it's something, and Dr. Carey can much better speak to this than I, it's something that we have got to have. One of the reasons that we had the frustration that we had at the end of the year when we were doing packets and we were doing some virtual and assignments were being sent home is because we did not have a robust learning management system. We had been looking at them. They'd come, made presentations to us. They'd come to the State Department and made presentations. And the State Department is fully aware of the fact that we have small rural districts across this country that really can't afford this on an annual basis, so they are trying to help us with this. But it will be a huge benefit to us as we have to go down the road of doing more virtual education. And with the pandemic and the status, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a little bit, but with where we are right now, we're going to have to do some of that, it looks like.
So this platform will essentially be a mini South Carolina virtual ed just for us.
Well, there are other people.
The virtual public school that's already there has a platform, and I'm assuming this one's going to be like it. Is that right?
It's,
Each student would have his or her own dashboard. They would have a single sign-in. They would sign in every course that they're in. Now I'm talking, I'm going to use high school as an example in my comfort area. All 8 classes that they have would be right there. They have an icon from the security class, the Lincoln class, the Smith, and everything would be there. They could go in, look at our school, so assignments that are posted, they could take right there on your device, and those grades would automatically be stored and put in our school. Then the teacher's job is easier too. So teachers can post videos, they can post links, assignments, tests, anything like that on that. And the student doesn't have to go to 100 different places. It's all in one single assignment.
Okay, so the total for Category 9 for educational technology with those 2 line items is $581,709. The final category is other activities, and it's an area that you actually are trying to make sure that you've got other areas covered. One of the areas that we felt that could possibly be a need is if we are going to be transporting students, and they are actually going to be transported to our schools, we have already been told that we would have to look at a 50% capacity on buses. In order to do that, in order to try to keep, especially very young children, socially distanced and where they're supposed to be, we felt the need to potentially have some more bus aids on our buses. And so therefore, in order to get additional bus aids, we would need to have some salaries and fringe benefits. And we estimated that that at a minimum, we could need about 25 additional bus aides, potentially. Salary and fringes for that. In addition, if we are back in the classroom, we do have one area, one location, one school in our district that has no nurse, that has, I think, around 700 students a day, and that's our career center. So there's potential that we would need to potentially look at a nurse in that area, and we have also been instructed by the Department of Education to try to have a health care provider at each of our locations, especially in light of the situation that we're dealing with. So we've got salaries and fringe benefits for bus aides and a potential additional nurse. And we've got purchase services. That would be for instruction and support services. One thing that we were told that we absolutely had to do was to provide funding to our local private schools. That is always something that we have to do with our federal funds. Title I is always a potential that we would have to provide funding from our Title I allocation. However, they don't typically request it. In this instance, they have requested it. They have about 208 students, and we had a formula that we had to go through and provide and figure out how much they would be actually potentially allocated, and that total was $58,273. We also had to meet with them and come up with what their plan is. They plan to use that $58,000 for contracted educational services, things like tutoring for students that might be falling behind, sanitation services and supplies, as we are, and educational technology, all very normal, typical things that any school is going to need some assistance with. They're working very well with us. One thing, though, is that these educational technology devices, they will be our property. Anything that we purchase for them stays our property. We are not sending them a check. We will actually purchase these things for them and send them to them. That is the requirement by the Department of Ed. So that's how that has to work, and we'll actually do that for them and get them to complete the purchase order that needs to be completed before we actually get those ordered. So that's their total. Additional supplies and materials, about $210,000. We're going to have other things that we may need to have for continuity of district operations. That's just one of those little bit of extra amounts of money that we might have to have in order to be able to make things work. This plan can be changed at any point in time. If we see that we don't have to do something in here, or we don't need as much in supplies and materials, or we don't have to have everything that's in here, we can change that. And it's just basically an amendment sent into them, and it gets rebudgeted and approved by them and sent back to us, and we move forward. We have until 2021 to actually expend these funds. I don't anticipate that it's going to take that long. I feel like they'll be spent by the end of, I think we've got until 2020, was it 2022? 2022. I think we'll be done in 2021. I don't necessarily envision that we would need quite that long. I know $1.7 million seems like a lot of money, but really and truly, with these kinds of needs and the things that we're planning to do with these funds, I don't envision that we would have a lot of money carrying forward into the next fiscal year.
So we could actually use a lot of the devices that we already have, and then next year we could refresh some of those with this COVID money.
And that's what we will be doing. We're getting additional ones. We're using our general fund dollars to purchase additional technology devices, and we're using the COVID funds. So the end amount for Activity 12 is $804,334. Bottom line, again, is $1,720,467.
So one time earlier when we were talking about the CARES Act, we were talking about maybe using some to make up for budget shortfalls, especially in payroll. Do you anticipate that?
It's hard to say. I mean, the legislature is not going to meet again until September. So far, they seem to think that it's through the projections thus far. They don't feel like that we will have any cuts, but they don't have any of the summer revenue projections in all of that. So hopefully, we're going to be able to withstand any reductions in light of the fact that we do have a fairly robust fund balance. We do have a little bit of funds, like I said, in here that's potentially we could use to help shore up any reduction. However, I do feel like our fund balance could also come into play if that has to be the case.
If we end up going to primarily virtual learning or distance learning, won't we have people that won't be involved in that we normally employ, such as media centers, curriculum coordinators, a lot of other administrative things that won't be involved in the direct learning anymore, cafeteria workers?
We'll be feeding.
We'll still be feeding regardless.
We turned into a feeding group. We didn't educate anybody for the last 2 months, but we fed everybody. So I get an earful of that. I understand that. But we're still going to feed people. We're just not going to let them come to school. Is that right?
That's the direction we're being given from the State Department. Yes.
Now,
Depending upon the model, and we'll talk about those models in a minute, Mr. Bledsoe, but even if we're on a rotating or a hybrid schedule, we still have a responsibility to feed our children. And so in that hybrid schedule, what the suggestion is, I read that this afternoon as a matter of fact, but the suggestion is that those that are in the building on that given day, if we're doing a 50-50 split, so we've got one group of kids coming in on A day and a second group coming in on B day, if that's the model that we end up using, which is potentially going to be something that we definitely have seriously got to take a look at, you'll feed the ones that are in the building on that given day, but we'll still continue to have either pickup or have buses taking food out to those that are, and we can do, in that case, it would be 3 meals a week instead of 5 meals a week for each kid.
So
we'd have to rotate that.
So we're already short of buses and drivers. We're going to cut the number of kids in half that we have on the bus, which works with the A day and B day. I get that. And then we're going to turn and send those same buses back out with food.
May not be the same ones. We could deliver the food on the same route.
We're going to be looking at some overtime for our bus drivers.
But again, that's what this
COVID,
CARES Act money is for. Yes. Yes. And we may be able to do a meal pickup as long as we do it while school is going on and it doesn't interfere with anything we've got going on. We could potentially do a pickup just like we're doing right now and have the parents to come get it. We really hadn't gotten that deep into it, but yes, we...
And we can until we know what model we're looking at. So.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Carey, with instruction.
Members of the board, Mr. Stuber, just want to give you a brief update about our summer program. As you know, every year for the last several years we've had summer reading camp, and we were projected or planning to start on Monday, July 6th. However, because of the spike in COVID-19 cases and recommendations from DHEC, and Ms. Ulch will go into that in a lot more detail, we have decided to put that off until further notice, until we see a decline in the numbers and some indication that it will be healthy for our students. Some districts have already called it off. We feel like we want to wait and see how things shake out, see if there is an improvement, and maybe we can do 2 weeks at the end of the month, but we just are going to have to wait and see. And I know that's not the answer everybody wants. We have to hurry up and wait, but we do want to do what is safe and best for our students and our families. We have explored, some districts have explored some virtual options for summer camp, and that is something that we are in the process of looking at. Unfortunately, the State Department, they have told us that the legislature will not reimburse us for any expenses for a virtual summer camp. They will only reimburse us for in-person. We do feel like we have some money in Title IV and some other places where we could maybe use that to provide some MiFis or things of that nature for our students who do not have internet access. We're currently exploring that right now, but it is disappointing that that the legislature has decided not to provide reimbursement to districts who do decide to go virtual. So we are exploring that. We are hoping to do in person later this month, but again, we are waiting and seeing.
And so, Dr. Carey, as a professional, don't you think that the people that would be attending those reading camps, of all people, would need personal instruction?
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
That's what, to me, it would seem like a waste to do anything else. So have we, I'm aware, again, I know I've been talking about this since April, we hadn't done any testing that I know of. It's like we're just thinking school's not going to happen, and I don't really like that mindset, but I understand that the State Department's mandating a lot of things. Have we formulated some plan to bring students back to school at a small group level? Anything? Like, have you, in the summer camp thinking, did you say, hey, we could pick this facility and have this many here in this area?
We actually did.
Yes, we did.
We
Okay.
did do that, and we actually cut our numbers down to have a little 40 at each site is what we had started with, and one number grew a little bit. But we did do that just so we could socially distance the kids. But
Good.
even doing that, even with masks and all of the other precautions, it is just not recommended by DHEC or the State Department for us to proceed in person at this time.
How many sites did we have originally set up? Just two. So we're talking about 80 kids? Okay.
Well, we started out with more than that. We
Yes,
started out with over 200.
We started with over
Well-
200. Back in May, the State Department conducted a survey of districts and asked how many we thought, but they didn't give us any parameters. They just said, how many kids do you think would need to come in K through 3 for summer camp? How many kids had, well, all of them had learning loss, let's be honest, but which students need that the most? We sent in 200. We felt like that was a conservative number. A lot of districts across the state did the same thing, and the state basically said they were overwhelmed by the numbers that the districts turned in. It was too many. So we were given another directive to cut that down and take the survey again.
So it didn't matter if they needed it, it was just too many.
It was too expensive.
Right.
And I don't want to, I'm not throwing the State Department or anyone under the bus. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of decisions being made above our level that I would not want to make. It's not an easy situation by any means, but that is what we're working with and what we're dealing with. But we did have 2 sites, Boundary and Prosperity Reichert, and Boundary was going to serve, or is going to serve, 5 of our schools, Whitmire, the 3 city schools in Reuben, and then Prosperity Reichert would serve Little Mountain, Prosperity, and Pomeria Garmony. And there were more at the city site, but given those schools, those are the ones that are the highest need as well.
I had asked you this before, what criteria was considered for students to be considered into this program. Now I'm hearing that some of it came down from the State Department.
Well, they basically said, look at your kids who are going to need it the most, who had the biggest learning gaps, who was the least engaged in, for us, our pencil paper packet operation, who maybe did we not get a lot of assignments back from, who looked like maybe they had struggled. To start with those students, particularly our I don't want to say disengaged, but the ones who weren't as engaged with the learning as we saw it from March until May.
So how do we as board members reconcile the State Department of Education on their website, and every time they make a public statement say, we're giving the districts great flexibility, one size does not fit all, and then everything we do is paralyzed, and we can't do anything. Is it our fault or their fault?
It's such a fluid situation. I don't know that it's anyone's fault. We're all trying to find our way and do what we can to best serve kids, and by the same token, is it safe, and are we, protecting students and families from disease? And a lot of times what we're finding is those things are in conflict with each other, and it is paralyzing to some degree, but I don't know that I would blame it on anyone. hopefully this is a situation that we never see again in our lifetime, but we're just trying to work with it through the best we can. I'm sorry I cut you off, Mr. Suber.
No, well, I actually was going to say something very similar to what you just said, but it is so fluid and it changes so much that this Accelerate Ed task force, and I don't know if any of y'all ever went online and listened and watched what went on, but there were a lot of people on that thing from all over the state, not all of them educators, that are very well respected, and they had 25 meetings, and every time they had a meeting, there were substantial changes that were made. So they get to their final draft, if you will, and they put it out for public comment, not just to educators. They put it out to everybody. They put it out to the superintendent's group, to teachers, parents, the whole 9 yards. And they had all kinds of feedback. They spent an entire weekend looking at that feedback, and to their credit, to that task force credit, they made some substantial changes because of things that parents, teachers, administrators, and even board members, I think it was sent to you guys as well through the School Board Association. So there were some changes made. But they also are very clear in their document that this could change on a daily basis or a weekly basis depending upon the environment that we're in at that point in time. And I'll give you an example, and I won't go into specifics, but Superintendent Spearman, in her call to all the superintendents on Thursday, gave us some flexibility in one of these areas with summer school that we're talking about. And then 2 hours later, we get a message that we have an emergency phone call. And that emergency phone call is because somebody heard what flexibility we were being given. And it was somebody in the legislature, and they said, nah, you're not going to get your money if you don't do it the way we want you to do it. So, and I'm not throwing the legislature under the bus, but I'm just telling you there are a lot of people that are involved in making these decisions, and it is very difficult to get everybody on the same page all the time. And I think what all of us have to consider, I mean, not just the people in this room, but the people in Columbia, the people in the State Department, parents, the whole 9 yards, is what we're trying to do is educate children to the best of our ability, but also keep those children safe while we're doing that. And right now, that is a major challenge. And one of the things, and I'll go on to something that I was going to say later, and I gave you copies of all these documents, but you've got a summary of the task force report, and you've also got the full task force report in front of you. And I'll touch on some things in the summary, but the one thing that is consistent is that based on where we are now, and where it looks like we're going as far as this pandemic and the number of positives, the percent positive, the increases that are going on, not just in this state, but across this country, and honestly, especially in the Southeast, is we're not going to do school in 2020-21 anywhere near normal unless something changes in a hurry. And it's uncomfortable for all of us. It's uncomfortable for parents, and we've got, and I get this from some of y'all, we get some calls, parents want to know now, what you going to do? What is going to happen on this date? Well, the reason that we are moving cautiously is because virtually every district that jumped out in front and said, okay, we're going to do this, this is our schedule, now they've had to pull it back. They put it back out, pulling it back again. What we would like to do is work with you guys, work with the State Department, and come up with what we feel like is the best plan for every student in this school district, and then put it out. And we've got a timeline. The timeline is 20 days before the first day that our kids are supposed to come to school. So August the 17th is when our kids report. So the week of the 24th would be the last possible time that we could roll out what our schedule looks like and what we're going to do, because we've got to give parents time to react to that. But when you look at it, this document just came out last week, and once they got through vetting it and getting the changes made, I mean, it's Wednesday, Thursday, and again, this was Friday morning that changes were still being made when I was on a conference call. We met for about 3.5 to 4 hours this morning, reviewing, going through the document. Everybody had already read it. We had our highlights and all that stuff. But we are also fully aware that within the next 24 hours, something in this document is going to change in one way, shape, form, or fashion. So we've just got to be prudent as we do it, and make sure when we do it, number one, we got a solid plan. Number two, we have shared that with you, and we've shared it with the community. It talks about task force, but when you get a document, and within 2 to 3 weeks, you've got to have a final document and scheduling and everything that's in that document. When you read it, it's going to overwhelm you. First of all, some of them are general guidelines, Mr. Bledsoe, that you're talking about. So to answer your question, yes, sir, there are some things that are simply general guidelines, and we've got some wiggle room to do what we feel like is best for our district. But what Ms. Ulch is going to get up and present to you, and I gave you a copy of that, is the recent disease activity count by DHEC. If you have been looking at this and reading this and listening to what's been going on, they've been saying for weeks that there's going to have to be identification of where there is low spread, medium spread, and high spread in communities. And one of the things that Molly and those said over and over, I know you guys, talking to superintendents, I know you guys want a one-size-fits-all document so everybody's doing the same thing, but she said, it may be different across the state when this pandemic pans out and we see what happens. So it may be low spread in 15 counties across the state, but it may be high spread everywhere else. Well, those 15 counties that are low, they're probably going to be able to bring their kids back in a brick and mortar building and do what they're supposed to do. But those that are in those high areas, and right now I'm just going to go on and tell you, and you've probably already seen it, Newberry County is a high area right now, and we're going to explain to you how that's done. DHEC is going to send this report out. They said weekly, but now they have said they're probably going to put the report out daily to kind of let us see what it is. One of the reasons that we're postponing summer school indefinitely is because this document clearly says that we can't bring kids into our building right now. It's not safe. And until they either do away with this document, or either we do better in Newberry County and across this state and across the country with protecting ourselves and lowering the spread of this pandemic, it may get worse before it gets better. I mean, if you go look at states like Florida and Texas, California is spiking again. I mean, they've got some hospitals that are at 90-95% capacity with beds available, and the pandemic and the percent positives are going out the roof. What's going to happen is they're going to be in the same state or stage that New York was in, and you're going to have to start throwing up temporary hospitals and things of that nature. God forbid, and I hope it doesn't happen in Newberry County, but this is a very difficult situation to deal with. There's not a perfect solution. Now, I'll tell you right now, and I'll say this right in front of my other 80 superintendent friends, there's not one school district in this state that is going to get this perfect. There's going to be some bumps, there's going to be some bruises, there's going to be some things that we have to try and they don't work, and we've got to go back to the drawing board and try to make it, find a solution to make it work. But this is a very challenging situation, but we will get through it. We'll get through it together. We're going to plan accordingly, and we're going to make everybody fully aware of what our plans are. So my apologies for that dissertation, but back to you.
Mr. Suber, I have a question that with everything that you're saying, because I went through that accelerated South Carolina, and I kind of, what I walked away from is that the guidelines that they gave and gave some examples of different things that you could follow, but the bottom line is it still all has to be approved by the Department of Education.
That is correct. It's got to fit into
Right.
the guidelines that we're being given. Yes, you are correct. And a lot of it we have to report to them and tell them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just wanted that for clarification, because that's what I've told some of the parents. I mean, we can come up with things, and it may sound good and look good, and
Right.
you may submit it, and then the Department of Education may say, no, it's not going to work.
Right.
Well, and one other thing, too, and I know you all realize this, you know, as much as folks want to know what does August 17th look like, and we will have plans, but this spread, whether it's low, medium, or high, is going to dictate which plan goes into effect, and that we may not know what that is until a week or two before that date. So as much as people want to know, even if we had a perfect plan right now, we couldn't tell them which one we would enact, because we don't know what August looks like.
And even if we enact one, and the Friday before we're supposed to start, we have a spike, that changes everything again.
And I don't know if I should say this yet or not, but we talked about this in Cabinet today. This isn't really on my topic of summer school, but right now, I know you've heard some districts are doing different things with calendars and pushing dates back. Right now, we talked, and I don't know that it's quite final yet, but we really do want to just start on August 17th and see what that looks like. Hopefully that's face-to-face. If not, we feel like we will be ready to go with virtual and get started, because we don't, the State Department has clearly said in that document, 180 days is what we're going to have to do, and we just don't, think it's a good idea to push school back into late June and July. We feel like we need to honor the calendar that we have as much as possible. So just wanted to share that as well.
I concur 100%. I think we need to have a goal, a shoot for a date. If we can do it, how we'll do it might be determined, but we ought to at least have that.
Oh, we're going to have, I promise you, you're going to have that. And I'll go ahead and say this, and I'm not saying that we've got some districts that are doing the wrong thing, but as of Friday, there were about 6 or 7 school districts that have already decided, well, it's right now we're in a hot spot, or we just don't feel comfortable doing this. We don't want to bring kids in the building. We don't have the technology or whatever it is. And they have moved back to the week after Labor Day.
I saw that.
But based on everything I'm hearing right now and seeing right now, I don't know that the week after Labor Day is going to be any better. So if it's not better, then what are they going to do? Are they going to push it back to October? Because next thing you know, you're going to be going to school the entire summer the following year. So we're going to do our best to adhere to the calendar that we have. But I'm going to reiterate something that Dr. Carey may have said, and I'm just going to come out bluntly and say it. If we stick to our calendar and the first day for students is August the 17th, if on August the 17th we're where we are today as a county with the spread and we're high, that means that we're going to start the school year with virtual. We'll set up a day where they can come get their pads. Our teachers will get everything ready. But you know what? We need to do that. But and as a matter of fact, one of the things in this plan, they're mandating that we have 2 e-learning days. Every school district in the state has got to have 2 e-learning days. So for those districts that weren't prepared last year, at least they can get some experience working with kids online and working with learning management systems and things of that nature. So as uncomfortable as this makes all of us feel, as uncomfortable, honestly, it's going to make some of our teachers, especially some of our maybe veteran teachers that are not as technologically savvy as some of these younger kids that are coming out of college, it is going to stretch our comfort zone. But when it's all said and done, we will be better off because of it, because we'll be much more diversified in the type of learning that we can deliver.
This doesn't have a lot to do with the summer programs, but along those lines of getting started back, has there been, and I haven't read the accelerated ed thing yet, but has there been consideration to hitting core classes harder with virtual and the limited schedule than the elective classes?
Not that I've seen.
Are we just going to start with a full slate and?
Yeah, well, in that document, I've seen exactly the opposite, to be honest with you. One of the things that they mandate is
I'm all about related arts, but to me, 2 years from now when we finally, or whenever we finally go back to standardized testing, I think we'd be better served to really concentrate on a limited schedule on those things that we're going to be tested on.
Well,
does that make sense?
That's a lot easier to do at the elementary level, and
that's primarily what I'm talking about.
When you've got a self-contained classroom where a teacher teaches all subjects, we definitely, if they have limited time with their students, would love to see them focus as much as they can on that reading and that math. And
will that be part of the flexibility that they're talking about giving us?
It could be, and I agree with Dr. Carey. Much easier at the elementary level,
and that's primarily what I'm talking about. I mean, it's a little different at the high school.
And we'll have to be creative because I don't want anyone to get the message that science and social studies aren't important. We will just have to use reading.
I'm not saying that either.
To teach our social studies and just incorporate it more. We've been saying that for years, and I feel like, and we've done okay with it, but we could do better. I feel like now we really, the rubber's going to meet the road, and we're going to have to, not forget about social studies, but pull it in when we do our reading, pull that science in when we do our math, and really hit those subjects hard. But we still will find a way to do the arts, because that's very important as well. We want to make sure that those aren't left out, because kids, we're talking about social emotional learning and making sure that that mentally they're in a good state. They're going to need those arts as well, and that PE and that interaction. So we don't want to forget those either. But I hear what you're saying about the.
I'm not saying forget them. I'm just saying if we've got limited time,
emphasis.
We need to make sure that we emphasize what the children are going to be tested on.
Yes, sir.
And I have a question either for Dr. Carey or for you, Mr. Stuber, that with I know in the accelerated 2, and I know some of the districts that have jumped ahead that they have forced they have put together those district task force? Is that something that we're planning on
Yes,
doing?
ma'am.
where
I'm
we
going to share
have
that
the
with you in a few
community-
minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that same thing like for how our teachers will learn if we have to do virtual, like training for them when
Yes, ma'am.
that's going to be done. So all that's, you're coming up with that.
Yes,
then.
and and not to say that we don't have some professional development funds available in some of our accounts, because we do, but we also can use some CARES Act money to do that if we need to as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because I just started thinking, I mean, for a lot of the teachers, because it is all brand new, and they're not going to know what to do or how to do things or feel awkward about it, and so I would assume that they would need some sort of training if we are going to go to the virtual.
Well, again, as we go to a new learning management system, I mean, everybody's going to have to be trained.
Right.
It won't be just those that are not necessarily technologically savvy. Everybody's going to have to be trained.
Yeah, and I guess with, too, just it being the short amount of time, because, I mean, really, we just have the month of July and 1 or 2 weeks in August to be able to even get all this done to, to where our teachers feel comfortable if they have to do this.
Right. And the other thing that we were told on Friday on our conference call from the State Department is that this is coming. We're going to use, they're going to use some of their CARES Act money to pay for this learning management system. But unfortunately, I know the next question I'm going to get is it going to be in place by the 3rd week in August? And the answer was no. It's probably going to be a little bit later. So you have got to work with your people in your district to offer whatever you can do virtually, which we are in the process of doing. That's why we ordered devices, and I think we'll be in a good place there. Much, much better than we were in March of last year when we couldn't put a device in every child's hand.
And this is just a curiosity question, that if they do go back into the building and the COVID maybe goes down, but it hasn't gone away, I mean, are we going to be requiring the students to wear masks or the teachers to wear masks, or?
That depends, and Trish can weigh in,
Okay.
can weigh in on this. Right now, and this gets political, and I'm not going to get political on you.
Right.
But they're using the word strongly recommended.
Okay.
But the strong recommendation is that unless a child has a reason not to wear a mask, that you wear it, because it protects everybody else. That's what a lot of people get confused on. Wearing this protects everybody else in this room, and Trish is the expert. It doesn't really protect you as much. It protects everybody
Right.
from you in case you may have, may be positive or you may be infectious.
I think that's a good segue, unless you have other questions for Ms. Ulch to come in and talk some medical stuff.
Chairwoman Metz, members of the board, and Mr. Suber, I don't think any of us would have predicted a few months ago where we would be today. This virus has affected all of us professionally and personally, and certainly presents many challenges and opportunities. I know for myself, I have been humbled and am receiving quite the lesson in patience, because I'm a planner, and, I like to know, but this is one of those times I think we definitely have to have the patience. 1 month ago today, we had 11,131 positives in South Carolina, 483 deaths, and a positive rate of 5.4%. At that time, Newberry County had 55 positives and 1 death. Today, the numbers that reported out today, South Carolina has 34,546 positives. We're up over 1,300 today, and the last 6 days in a row, we've had over 1,000. We've had 717 deaths and a positive rate of 15.5%. Weekly, they report the cumulative case rate per 100,000. And in South Carolina, as of 6/27, that rate is 639 per 100,000. Newberry County, as of yesterday's numbers, the numbers that reported today, we have 246 positives, 4 deaths, and our rate per 100,000 in the county is 639. So when we look at, when the Accelerate Ed Task Force developed this final document and the 3 potential scheduling models, the traditional, the hybrid, and the full distance, they also asked DHEC at that time, would you provide a model, some metrics, so counties would be able to say, okay, are we low, medium, and high? And if we are, that coincides with one of those models. So I believe all of you have the recent disease activity by county, and this is as of 6/21. And they look at 3 different metrics. They look at the 2-week cumulative incidence rate, and that's the rate per 100,000. They look at the trend in the incidence rate, so if it's increasing or if it's stable or if it's decreasing as far as our number of positives. And then they also look at the 2-week percent positive rate. And if you look at Newberry County, as of 6/21, we had a medium and a high. So when you average those, the way they want you to look at that, we would be overall high. And if this comes out again in a week, and I think their goal is to update this daily, I've got a feeling that first number of the 2-week cumulative incidence rate will also be in the high category. So based on that, with the different models, a high would coincide with the full distance learning.
And this, if I may, Trish, and I hate to keep butting in, but some of you have probably seen, and I'm going to talk about the South Carolina High School League deal, so I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but since this document came out on Friday or was made available to us on Friday, and it was circulated to superintendents across the state, you have seen a lot of those programs that had their fall sports out practicing that have shut it down. A lot of them are the larger school districts. We had planned to go out on the 22nd, and we shut it down on Saturday because of the numbers that we were seeing and because of some of the activity that was going on in Newberry County and across the state. And obviously now multiple school districts have done that.
Are there any questions? Yes.
You said a while ago that the state of South Carolina was 639 per 100,000,
Correct.
and Newberry was also 639?
Correct. And just to have some comparison, when you look at that DHEC site, they also list other states who've had severe illness to kind of give you a comparison. So as of, let's see if I can get this right, as of 6/27, California's rate per 100,000 was 525, and Texas' rate per 100,000 was 504.
And what do you have the numbers for the? You gave us the positive in South Carolina. What were the positives in Newberry?
As of today, the number of positives 246, and 4 deaths.
4 deaths.
Yes, sir.
And then, what is our percentage of positive cases in Newberry?
I don't have the percent for Newberry because I don't know how many were tested versus how many positives
Okay.
came back.
How many deaths again?
4.
4.
4 too many.
Yes, ma'am.
And not all those deaths were elderly. There were
Correct.
2 of them in there that were middle-aged.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Ulch, as a medical professional, what is your opinion or, I guess, belief in the testing that we're currently doing? There are several different kinds of tests being done.
Right.
How
If you're
effective
positive, you're positive. Certainly if you're negative, it's just like if you go test for the flu, you feel bad, you go in, you test negative, you go in a few days later, and maybe your viral load's a little higher and you test positive. So the incubation period for COVID-19 is 2 to 14 days. So that's why in part of the exclusion and case management, if you've been around someone who is positive, they ask for you to self-quarantine for 14 days from the last time you have been around that person, even if you test negative, because then they could turn around and test positive later on. So, the tests are as good as any other test, like I said, with the flu, and depending on your viral load. Now, as far as antibody testing, there's still, mixed results on that. I mean,
Right.
Certainly they don't suggest that for a return to work type of situation because the studies and research they're doing now, they don't anticipate or they don't see that you're having long-lasting immunity, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So that's not a predictor of, if you're going to be okay or not get it again. They don't know.
Do you understand, when we make these, use these numbers like high, increasing, and high, there's a difference between testing positive and even being sick?
Correct,
And there's a big difference in being sick and dying.
correct.
And this is not factored in, is it?
Well, I think the issue is, and that's why I am glad when they created this, Mr. Bledsoe, that they have these three factors. Because you're correct. If we were just looking at the number of cases in a day, that doesn't take into account the percent positive. Because with that, if we are testing enough to know how much disease is in the community, then that rate should be low. That gives us a better idea, okay, we've got a handle of what's going on in the community, we can contact trace better, and that's why the more testing we do, especially for our individuals who are asymptomatic, then we can give them the direction to isolate until that, and not continue the spread. Because the issue is, in our hospitalization rates, that's where we also keep an eye on. And I know in April 15th, the graphing with the Midlands, Low County, PD, and Upstate, those ranged from 54% to 61%. Those hospital rates, and of course that fluctuates every day, depending, when people are discharged, people coming in, range from 66% to 80%. So that really is the danger. If we start seeing those hospitalization rates increase, then it's going to put us in a bind, our health care and our people who need the care.
And isn't that true that a lot of that is because hospitals began doing elective surgeries and some of the other things that they'd put off originally? This is not just COVID cases that you're
Right.
talking
No.
about.
As of the 24th, there were approximately 2,700 inpatient beds that were available, and over 7,700 were in use. So that's like almost a 74% statewide hospital bed utilization rate. And they estimate at that time 832 were occupied due to patients with COVID and with or who were under investigation of COVID. So while those surgeries and things were put off, and you're correct, we may be seeing more of those beds being used for that, but the danger is as those beds are filling up and our numbers and percentage are increasing, then we may have more need for the beds due to COVID. So it's that balancing. It's always that balancing.
I just disagree sometimes with the messaging. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I want to ask you this, if you don't mind answering. What is your
If I can.
feeling on herd mentality of COVID-19?
Say that again, of herd?
Herd mentality. That let everybody get out and be exposed to it. Very few people will die. A few more will get sick. And we'll move on.
Well, and I'll just say, it didn't work so well in 1918 with the herd immunity with the Spanish flu. Once we have a vaccine, and because we develop herd immunity as we're immunized for the people who don't get vaccinated for different things, I don't think it's wise to just say, let's go out there, we're going to get it, we're going to do, because we've seen how contagious this virus is and what it's done to other states when, so I just hope as we see these numbers increasing that all of us, kind of like Dr. Fauci said, all of us take that responsibility as we are protecting other people, and hopefully just get through this and hope and pray we don't ever go through this again.
Yeah, well, I mean, too, as far as the herd immunity, I mean, if you're one of those that maybe you don't have health problems to begin with and you think you're sort of immune, because I know that we've had individuals in Newberry County who were younger who tested positive and took it to other family members who ended up in the hospital.
Correct.
So you just don't know. I mean, you don't have to necessarily have an illness.
And that is the danger, because we're not seeing, maybe some of our young folk are asymptomatic, or maybe they have a, stuffy nose or runny nose, and that's the only symptom they have, but then they go visit their grandparents or someone else in their household with diabetes or anything. So, yeah, you're right. Any other questions?
Since you brought it up, I'll ask you this. Would you require, or should the Newberry County School District require this vaccination if one becomes available at the end of this year?
I don't know, as with any vaccine, that we can require it.
That's what I was trying.
I have a feeling that we will work with DHEC. I wasn't here during that H1N1 time when we were doing the vaccinations through the school, but I've got a feeling once one's available, and I can't speak for DHEC, but I've just got a feeling that's the best way to kind of get that out is through the schools, like they did with the vaccinations back with H1N1. So as far as requiring, I don't think we can require someone to take
We'd certainly encourage it.
Correct. Yes, sir.
But same thing again, that with the new vaccine that hasn't been tested very long, I mean, there are a lot of people that are actually would be afraid to take it.
Sure. And that's a very valid point. I mean, because things are moving quickly with trying to get the vaccine developed, and it's scary. I definitely would want to see the research on that and how many people and side effects and things. You're exactly right.
Do you have access to the number of tests that have been performed in Newberry? You said you didn't have it, but
correct.
But can you get that for me?
I can attempt to get that. Absolutely, yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If it helps Jody, when they did the testing at Newberry High School, they had 546 people that showed up that day.
I'm just trying to get a picture of percentage.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
No, I think
Because that's the last number you hear on the media.
Correct.
They won't talk
Well,
about
they have to
percent.
have those numbers because if they're figuring it by county, and that's one of the metrics with the trend and incident rate, the 2-week percent positive rate, they have to have that. So
All right.
I will find it out for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, and now, Dr. Ware.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I have 3 administrative rules for information tonight. They were helping us navigate these uncharted times that we are in, and we've heard a lot about it tonight. So the first one deals with remote work for employees, and it allows us to allow that remote work, and if it can be performed remotely. And we had some updates to it that are just specific to our district that talk about the immediate supervisor approving things and approving any leave. Just so you know, we cannot use remote work in lieu of sick days or time off. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one addresses remote instruction, which we've talked about that as well. And we, in this one, added that most of our information is communicated through our automated call system and through our website, and the way that our students and their parents can access teachers through the email addresses on the school websites. And then we also talk about in it where we can have technology department available for assistance and the contact information on that. The third one deals with virtual board meetings, which we are having right now, where we do broadcast these live through YouTube Live. A couple of things that we updated in this one includes if we have any technology issues, how long we will wait for that, and how long it will take us to get back online before we figure another method out for the meeting to continue. We also in this policy talk about where the meetings are recorded and posted for the general public to view them later. Do you have any questions about the 3 administrative rules for this? Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Sewer?
Okay, Madam Chairman, members of the board, just remind you, I think this is in your packet, but the school boards, the School Board Association School Law is going to be a virtual conference this year, and that's on August 22nd and 23rd, and you've got the information, the registration information in your packet, and if you'll let Ms. Alford know by the deadline as to whether you are interested or not, we would appreciate that. Also, just want to mention the graduations, the 2020-21 graduates and the 20 graduating class, if you will. And I want to thank you for lending your support and you being patient as we worked through that process. There were some very difficult decisions that were made. For those of us that were able to attend any of the 3 graduations, we did all 3 of them. Whitmire's was inside. Mid Carolina and Newberry High Schools were both outside. All of them were limited to 2 tickets, and they were all exceptional in my opinion. Just so many good things went on, a lot of very positive comments from parents, from kids. I really think that they were appreciative of the fact that they got to have a graduation period, because some did not or were not able to do it the way that we did it, and I think there are some still waiting on a graduation to take place out there. But we appreciate your support. We were able to, as I've told you before, we were able to buy the class of 2020 signs, the yard placards, if you will. We paid for those as a district, and all 3 schools issued those to their graduating seniors. And we also did a commemorative DVD that was done by our in-house professionals. And I don't think we've got those yet, have we, Carson? So those will be coming, and we'll get those to the kids. But it'll be a DVD that is no other that has been done in this school district. A lot of things have been inserted in it that they provided to us, and I think it'll be a quality thing. The sound system was exceptional, and the setup in the areas that we had to contract was done well, and thank goodness we had no rain. So very proud of the graduations that we were able to offer to our graduates, and certainly appreciate them and their parents for the patience they had as we went through our decision-making process. Next, the South Carolina High School League returned to practice and play. You should have a copy of this in your packet. There was a task force that was selected to do this. I had the honor of serving on the task force, and I don't mind telling you, we had 5 different meetings, or so there were 5 different drafts of this document, and we could never come to a 100% agreement. But one of the things that several of us were concerned about is that we kept using the word highly recommended in some areas where we felt like there needed to be requirements. And what has occurred since then, and you might have seen some of this come out in the press, but after they got the report from DHEC as to the positives that were occurring and some of the things that were occurring in counties across the state, they were seeing that younger people are contracting this disease and are infecting others at a higher rate. Then there are a lot of districts that decided to pull back the summer practices, and I'll just bring you this document for your information. There's a question and answer thing, but again, that's how fluid this is. This document has already changed. So they're going now to go back, and where it says highly recommended, they are going to go back and put the word required in there, because you know, you've got some people that will sometimes read a document and they'll interpret it the way they want to do it on the field. And we were out of town last week for a couple of days, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but it was a local TV station there that had been out to some of the fields, and they were showing what was going on the field. Well, being a member of this task force, I know exactly what they were allowed to do, and some people have become very creative as to how they're doing it. So again, a lot of districts have pulled that back. This is simply phase 2. There is a phase 2 and phase 3 that has not even been discussed yet, but phase 2 would be taking it, because this was nothing but strength and conditioning with 9 players and 1 coach, and you could only have 1 group of 10 in an event area. So if there was 1 football field, it was 1 group there. If there was a soccer field, it's 1 group there. If there were main gym, 1 group of 10 could be there, and the next group of 10, that includes the coach, could be in an auxiliary gym. Somebody could be in the cafeteria or whatever. So it didn't say you couldn't have 50 or 60 kids on campus at the same time, but they just couldn't be in the same places. But that was simply strength and conditioning. Phase 2 is supposed to be getting them back to being able to, if you're, I'll use football as an example, we can now line up in a formation, we can get our wide receivers out there, we can hand the ball off, we can get some dummies over there for kids to block and things of that nature. But the problem and the challenge that comes with that is every time you do that, when you switch groups, you have to disinfect everything that they touch. And what we instructed, even though we didn't get to start, what we had instructed our folks to do, and I think probably most everybody in the state did it, but what we instructed ours to do is that when you do a group, that is your pod. And when you establish your pod, that pod stays the same throughout the duration of phase 1 or phase 2, because if you start skipping and saying, well, you know what, I don't want to come at 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. I believe I'd rather come at 11 o'clock because Mr. Bledsoe's my best buddy and I'm going to ride with him and I'm going to go to his pod that day. Well, what happens is when kids start switching pods, and one of them becomes infectious or is positive, if that kid has been to 3 pods, there's 27 kids that are gone to the house for 14 days versus 9 kids having to go for 14 days of self-quarantining. So that's why we suggested the pod deal, if you will. But right now, we're just going to have to wait and see. My understanding, and they have not called me directly yet, my understanding is that they're contemplating going ahead and at least talking about phase 2, but not a whole lot of sense in putting a document out there right now, because right now we can't even complete phase 1. So we'll just have to wait and again see what this pandemic does, and it kind of dictates what we do. Any questions on that document or the high school league's decision?
Actually, your comment on the pod just jogged my memory. It's something I meant to ask earlier, and you or Dr. Carey may be able to answer this. I saw somewhere that in the recommendation of Department of Education, you could do virtual, you could do AB days, you could do a lot of different things. In that, it gave flexibility for a student to choose virtual today and something else next week, and go back and forth. Have y'all seen that? Because I don't think that's a very good idea.
No. The only thing I've seen that spoke to that was you could choose virtual and you could come back if space allowed, but
Okay.
you could not overload that class max. And
Okay.
it could be here day one tomorrow.
Good.
You have
I'm
to
glad to
stick
hear
with
that.
it.
Okay.
But yes, but if
Because I think once that choice is made, just like with the pods, I think it's
Yes.
important.
I agree.
Exactly.
Well, Mr. Suber, I hate to even mention this, but if a school district had to go totally virtual because of the numbers, does that mean there would not be any fall sports as well?
Yes, I would assume that, and again, I know y'all read papers and watch TV just like I do, but it's not obviously it's not just the high schools that are dealing with this. Now you've got your Division I football coaches that are saying, I mean, South Carolina put out, their athletic director put out a letter to his staff and to Gamecock Club members, and I'm sure that Clemson has probably put something out as well. But now they're saying that what I said a minute ago, you're not going to see football, volleyball, all these fall sports as usual, unless something changes in a hurry. And I don't think that the metrics make us believe that by the time the first football game rolls around, everything's going to be great and we're going to be ready, because the thing is, even if it got better the first week in September, we've still got to get those kids conditioned. You can't just take those kids and put them out on the field when they don't have general conditioning, because what's going to happen, somebody's going to have a heat stroke and that kind of heat. So you would still have to have a season that is compacted and you don't start till a certain date. But then you get into, are you going to have football without fans in the stands? Are you going to have football and do something like we did with graduation? You're going to have to social distance the people that come in and limit the amount of tickets or the number of tickets that you sell. And the other thing of this, and I know it's not all about money, but I'm just going to go ahead and lay this out there. One of our great concerns, our first concern is the health of all of our students and our staff. But one of our concerns as far as athletics goes is there's not very many school districts in the state of South Carolina and in this country where the cash cow is not football. Mm-hmm. That's where you make your money, and other sports, especially your minor sports, live off of that money. And if we don't have a football season and we don't have football gates, we are going to have some athletic departments that are going to have a very difficult time once we start back up funding it. And we're potentially going to have to help them some. I'll just go on and plant that seed right now, because I think the last thing we need to do is to do away with extracurricular activities. But you've already got some of your colleges, especially some of your mid-level, your D1s, D2s, some of them have already cut some teams in sports and programs. And eventually that may happen at the NCAA, Division I level if this thing doesn't turn around. So there's some very grave concerns with what's going to happen with sports. Yes. Any other questions as far as athletics go? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Accelerate Ed Task Force final guidance. You've got both documents. I've got the summary So what I'm going to do, and I know this is already going to be a long meeting as it is. I'm just going to touch on some key points, and some of them I'm going to skip because y'all have already asked the question, and I'll kind of tell you what page I'm on. But on page 2, I talked about the fact that there's disclaimers. On page 2, in that next to last paragraph, it says the summary is not meant to convey the task force fully detailed recommendations in determining how to properly execute a reopening plan for 2021. We understand that these are not perfect solutions for every student, family, teacher, or school district. In a pandemic, perfect solutions don't exist. And it goes on to the next page, and I've already said this to you, so I'm not going to read it. This is not going to be a normal year. I think we all know that. And then the last thing, and this is not on the document, it's in my handwriting, but this is the fact for every school district in this state. If we are forced to be at 50% capacity on buses and 50% capacity in schools, it won't be normal. There will be a hybrid schedule of some kind that will have to take place because there's no way that we can do everybody in the same day, and I'll get into more of that later. Transportation, and Dr. Hunter can allude to this, and we've already met with the transportation staff. They're already looking at routes, looking at buses, but transportation will be totally different as well, and we'll discuss that at a later date. In turning to page 4, it talks about the health and safety infrastructure grants and the purchase of PPE. We've already talked to you about that, and we're pretty well stocked. We're still waiting some stuff to come, and we're still ordering every day when we can find hand sanitizer and all the Clorox wipes and all that stuff that is in short supply. We're ordering as much as we can while we can get it, and we still got supplies of that coming in. On page 5, I think that was Ms. Lake that asked about the task force. This looks good on paper, and we're certainly going to establish the task force, but with the timeline that we've got to turn this around and have a plan in place, we can't take a whole lot of time in doing it. So right now, our idea is we're going to have a district task force. We're meeting tomorrow. It was supposed to be our administrative retreat. It will be all of our principals, our directors, and selected staff that this involves, which is technology, child nutrition, transportation, because those are the people that are going to have to make some substantial changes with how we do business. So we will formulate a district task force. What we'll probably do is go to our district strategic planning group, which involves parents and community members. We'll probably pull a few of them to come in for the meetings that we will have. But the bigger part of it is going to be, and our principals will be informed of this, and I've already talked to a bunch of them, but they will have their own task force at their school, and they can pull from their school improvement council, their PTO, their PTSO, so they will be getting feedback at the same time that we're giving them feedback, and we will be collaborating with them back and forth. The reason that needs to be done, and we've had this discussion earlier this evening, but it's not going to be the same in every school. It's not going to be the same in every community. So there may be something that the Mid-Carolina area or a school in the Mid-Carolina area that can do differently that nobody else can do. So that's why you need a task force at your own school to say, okay, what's best for our school? Because this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. And then survey of staff. I got a couple of emails on that. We have, it's actually not, the first one says survey of staff, but there will be a staff survey. There will also be a student and a parent survey, which we're calling the family survey because it'll be the same survey that will go out. And we've got and I will allude to this later, but we are working on a plan as to how we're going to disseminate that survey and get the results back. We actually, Carson brought the rough draft to me. We talked about it this morning. We have collaborated with a lot of other school districts as to, what are they thinking about, what surveys. So we looked at a whole lot of them, and then we had some stuff that we wanted that were unique to our county that we wanted to involve. But we've got our rough draft together. We'll look at the final draft of that tomorrow, and those surveys will go out to all of our staff and to all of our constituents in the school district as far as parents and students go. That it will go out by the end of the week this week, and we'll have a turnaround on that, and we'll look at the survey results, and when we get those survey results, we will share them with you as well.
Mr. Sugar, when you talk about staff, you're talking about like all the teachers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
can I jump in for a second?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if we've done this before, but I know if you can make a QR code, could be another way to kind of get it out, because a person can actually open the camera on their phone, and the survey will pop up. And so people who may not have a laptop at home, they can do it on their phone, and there'll be an easier way. You can put the QR code on the website, and the person put their phone up to it, and they'll pop
Right.
up. So that's, I don't know if we've done it in the past, but just another way to kind of help get it out faster, something to look at. You can create the QR code yourself, and they'll get it out to more people.
Okay, we can look into that. I don't know if that's a possibility of what we do, but I think that one of the districts that shared with us, that's what they did. That was one of the options they had. So we'll certainly look at that, and if it's something we can do with our technology, we certainly will. I'm going to skip to page 9, and it says review school calendars. Dr. Carey has kind of already alluded to that. And right now, I think all of you are in agreement. Right now, our plan is to try our best to stay with our calendar that we have now and make whatever adjustments we've got to make as we get different reports from DHEC as to what this pandemic is doing. The distance learning contingency plan on page 10, we've already talked to you about that, and I've already talked about update on planning for reopening and what they're telling us, and I've already said this, but we have got to have our final plan in place and out to our general public at least 20 days prior to the first day our students were supposed to be in school for. So for us, that would be the latest day we could do it would be July the 27th, but as I told you a few minutes ago, we're shooting for the week of July the 20th through the 24th to go ahead and put our final plan out there. So everybody's got that, and they can see exactly what times we're coming and who's coming and how the groups are separated, because there's a lot of work that's got to be done. It be done. If we're tomorrow going to discuss with our staff, we're going to go ahead and give them the green light to go ahead and look at a hybrid 4x4 schedule at the high school level, but they're also going to have to look at families, and one of the conversations in here that you'll see or you might have seen is that we need to take into considerations if somebody has an elementary child, a middle school child, and a high school child, we need to collaborate in that attendance area, and we need to try to get all 3 of those kids going on the same day. So if we're going to have, and this is, I'll go ahead and tell you now, this is what we're looking at, and we feel like that it is about the only solution that is going to let us have a robust career center as well, is doing a 4x4 schedule, and they use the term AB. To us, AB means something totally different in scheduling, but for this purpose, AB simply means you got an A group, which is 50% of your kids, you got a B group that's 50% of your kids. So one group comes on on Monday, the next group comes on Tuesday, so the group that was there on Monday is doing their virtual work on Tuesday, and then it rotates. The A group comes back in on Wednesday, the B group comes back in on Thursday, and then Friday is a virtual learning day for everybody, but it also could be a virtual learning day if we get all the equipment in place where a teacher could actually try to get all of her, if we have devices in all their hands, we've got Wi-Fi's, and it's never going to be 100%, but a teacher could potentially do a Zoom call or a WebEx or a webcam or whatever it is they do. I don't know all the terms for that, but they potentially could have, 15, 16, 17 kids and going over some things that they've sent them virtually. So there are a lot of different options there. But there also could be, that could be a day where they've got a research paper to write, or they've been given an assignment on Friday. This is what you're working on, and when you come back in on Monday and Tuesday, we're going to go over that. So we've got a lot of planning to do, and we'll certainly start that with our principals and teachers ASAP. But I think that was about it on that page.
On our technology, have we assessed the county to see how many students it's going to be problematic for them?
We've assessed the county two or three times.
And it's constantly changing because of the Carolina Connect and all that.
Well, the other part of it is you can only get a certain amount of survey return. So if you assume the others do not have access, you assume that they do not get the survey. But based on the responses, we were about 30 to 35% without
She is. In the initial numbers, there was a survey, the initial numbers we sent in were high, and they were high but because of that, is because we were looking at the number of students versus the number of households. So we have sent them, I think, some new numbers in now, and I think the state, they're discussing or negotiating a state contract. My understanding was possibly with Verizon to do it at the state level through the state contract, and that would be something that would be much cheaper than if we did it as an individual school district. So we hadn't received those results yet, but we anticipate receiving those.
Two things you touched on, Mr. Superintendent: transportation. I heard Superintendent Spearman say that we may ask parents to bring their children. Have we made any effort toward identifying
That's
that?
in our survey, yes, sir. In our survey, we're basically asking if your child is a bus driver, do you feel comfortable putting your child on a bus, or would you be willing to bring your child to school so we've got some additional room on the bus, or we can better socially distance? That's part of our survey. Yes, sir.
In schools, where we do a district task force, sometimes it comes back to bite you like a calendar committee. But I saw two different results. One of them came back over 50% said we want them to go to school. We want them to have physical learning in the classroom. Another one said 24%. So it's all over the board when you do things like that.
But I want to be careful with this, and we may put a disclaimer out, because when most people see the word survey, they think that the survey results are going to automatically, if they're in the majority, it's going to be in their favor. Well, in this case, that's not necessarily the case, because we may have 70% of the people that say, I want face-to-face instruction, but when these numbers come in and DX says, Newberry County, you're still a high-risk county, we can't bring them back. So we're going to have to look at the science. We're going to have to look at the facts and figures that we get from DHEC, and we're going to have to follow the regulations we're being given from the state government, from the South Carolina Department of Education, and from DHEC. So,
I guess my point is I'm all for disclosure, but you got to be careful about how you say it.
I agree.
52% of respondents said, so that means it's going to happen, but not necessarily.
I fully agree.
Okay.
You're exactly right. And as far as buses go, there is a possibility that we may have to double route some buses depending upon the numbers that we get. And we may end up having, right now, we're still going on last year's bus routes, and Dr. Hunter and those have been for 3 weeks looking at those routes. We have not changed any, because we need to get these survey results and find out exactly who wants to ride a bus and who doesn't. The registration, Doc, have we done? When is the registration, or have we done it? This coming week? It's next week. Okay, so what we're doing is an early bus registration, so we will have the facts and figures as to the addresses, so we can go ahead and start plugging them in. We've always waited until open house days, but we're having to do it early this year for that specific reason.
You mentioned A day and B day, which we do in high school, but the A group and B group will be different. Does that mean that the high school students would possibly only have face-to-face meetings with their teacher 1 day a week because they're on an A-B schedule? Or would they see all of their teachers twice a week?
If I'm there on Monday, I'm back in class on Wednesday. If I'm in class on Tuesday, I'm back in class on Thursday. Everybody's out on Friday.
Okay.
That's a virtual day.
Right. So the answer to the question is they will see their teachers twice a week.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
They're very different from what we've done before, and not something that we're saying we're going to continue after this. This is just because it's
Right. Right. Okay.
All right, the last thing I was going to cover with you on this as far as a focus was the 3 different options that we've got, but I've already covered that. It's either traditional or a hybrid or a totally virtual opportunity. Is there anything that we hadn't talked about that you want to talk about the 3 different platforms that we could use?
I think so.
Okay.
We've actually gotten, one parent has actually suggested, and this is something that our task force suggested from consider, instead of doing maybe a Monday, Wednesday, do a Monday, Tuesday, so the kids get 2 consecutive days of instruction, and then Wednesday be cleaning, and Thursday, Friday would be the other group. So we're open to any kind of suggestion like that, as long as you're, doing right by our students and what that
Absolutely.
Dr. Carey, what would it look like, too, I mean, as far as because I know some teachers travel between schools, like Whitmire and Reuben or Prosperity and Pomeria. What would it look like for those teachers that end up traveling?
Luckily, we have very few, but that is something we'll have to consider at those schools. Like every year and during the summer, we ask those two principals or shared teachers to work their schedules out so that teacher can physically get there and have some time for planning as well. So they would just need to work that out with that, for that teacher to work together, which is not going to be good.
Okay. And then what would the Career Center possibly look like?
It would look just like it looks now with those groups, because that would be going to that semester block is what we call it's okay with Career Center, but if we did something different, it would really hurt the Career Center with their numbers and make it difficult for kids to have that 3-hour block that they do now.
Okay.
So it would work very well for the Career Center.
And very well harm the possibility of having as many completers upon graduation.
It may help us increase completers, because essentially if you have room in your schedule, you could do perhaps welding 1 first semester, and welding 1 and 2, and then welding 3 and 4 spring semester if you have room in your schedule, and you could complete them.
Okay.
I have a quick question. It's a health question, though, so you can help me out. I was wondering about, if we go back to school and we're requiring people to wear a face mask, what does that look like for the time period that they have that mask on throughout the day? I mean, will there be some restrictions on, like, wearing it for 5-6 hours at a time, or what would that look like? I'm curious to know.
Well, certainly it would depend on the type of face mask. Cloth mask would certainly be worn. What the guidelines say is that if you're not able to maintain that 6-foot distance, you should have, a cloth mask on to protect. So again, a cloth mask is not PPE.
Right.
So it's not personal protective equipment. If we're all wearing it, I'm protecting you, you're protecting me. So that's the goal, have as many people as possible wear, so we can, sometimes when we talk, it comes out and happens, and we protect ourselves with that. So as far as whether it's going to be required or not, that, in part of the survey, we're asking people how they feel. And if they send their children, my thought is too, those that are wearing them have masks that they feel comfortable with, then we certainly would want them to wear that, if that's what they feel comfortable with. If you're talking about, the mask like you got right there, typically it's a 4 to 5 hour wear before you change that. That's why we, with the cloth mask that can be laundered. I think there would be times during the day when people are socially distant that they can have the mask off. Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Somebody doesn't have to wear that all day. One of the things too with teachers and outside with the task force that teachers had suggested was the shield, because it allows students to see the face. Now that is considered personal protective equipment. So having a shield that goes all the way around and down, my thought is teachers would have that option of the cloth mask, the shield, or both.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, and just something just popped in my head. This will be the last one. If a student forget their face mask, are we sending them home, or will we have something there?
No,
Well,
we'll,
the thought is we would have some disposable
Okay.
ones that they would be able to.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and again, all this is working
Right.
things out. I have a lot of stuff in my mind. So my thought is, if we have families that couldn't provide that cloth mask, then that's something
Right.
to discuss that we can look at.
Okay.
So absolutely.
All right, thank you.
yeah, the state is providing some cloth face masks. Actually, we just got the first batch of those today, and they were for summer school. And they're providing them for teachers, teachers' assistants, and when we start the school, they're going to provide them for teachers, teacher assistants, cafeteria workers, custodians. Who am I leaving out? Bus drivers, yeah. But they're not providing for students. And I get it, I understand it. I mean, with the cost involved and the number of students in the state of South Carolina. So what we would recommend is we potentially could do one for maybe every student, but for us to continuously buy cotton face masks, we would go broke doing that. So we'd encourage the families to get a couple of those. But we bought 10,000 of these temporaries, first batch, and I'm pretty sure we've already done a second order, maybe even a third order. We will have plenty of those. There won't be a shortage of face masks unless there's a shortage of being able to get them. And right now they're in back in the 2 months ago you couldn't get them anywhere. I mean, they were in short supply, but right now they're putting them out, and there's plenty of people wanting to sell them too.
And it's a practical matter, Miss Ulch. Have you ever tried to put a mask on a third grader for an hour? Well, you almost...
But it does make a difference, and I think that's why when you look at having classes that stay in their cohort, where the teacher stays with them, that they are socially distanced while they're at their desk, then that is an opportunity for them to be able to take that mask off.
I think that's got to be realistic. I mean, they do more harm than good once they start fooling with it and pulling it down.
Some of the guys, if you're looking at middle and high versus your elementary,
That's exactly
to touch their
Right.
mask and that kind of thing. So really, and what we have to, I think the first question that we ask when we plan anything is, are we able to socially distance? Because these don't take place in social
Absolutely. That's right.
So I think that, and part of that is all these things, running around in here, is that education. Education for the staff, education for the families before we come back, because I want them, we all want them to feel comfortable. It's scary. It's scary for all of us. So to put in as many safeguards as we can and give them that information so they can feel comfortable calling me or one of the other school nurses to talk about things.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
This is a little bit over that, but why are we still not doing dial testing or IEP evaluations? We got a start date. We know we're going to shoot for this day for school, and we don't know what we're going to put in kindergarten and who's going to be in IEPs.
Let's see. I don't know. Have we not done any
Some dial testing
I
for
thought we did.
I know that some schools have been doing that. And as far as the evaluation for the IEPs, I don't know that it would depend on, of course, the recommendations for the social distancing and that kind of thing at this point in time. But our folks, school psychologists, I don't believe any of them are 240-day employees, so they typically don't work in the summer after they wrap up their reports and things of that nature.
To me, it just seems like we're going to get to the start of school, and this is going to be a problem that we did not address when we had all this time. We said we were going to do it the last 2 weeks in May, and that kind of flew by because of some other things.
But isn't that because the State Department won't let us use our facilities, won't let us have children?
Yeah, and I don't think that they would recommend at this point in time with us being high right now. I don't think they would recommend that. But I mean, we can look at that when we come in for those first 5 or 6 days.
Well, I talked to Ms. Stoudemire because I do understand there's a lot of things involved in it, and she said, you want to give a fair evaluation. You want the child to feel at ease. You want him to have a learning environment, but it just seems like we ought to make some effort to get some of those things cleared up out of the way. We'll have enough hurdles once we decide, hey, this is the way we're going and here's what we're shooting for, without some of the things we already know are going to have to be done.
Right. Good point. Well taken. We'll have some more conversation. Thank you, sir. Anything else? Okay, you have the meeting dates for our board meetings for the 2021 school year in your packet. If there, for some reason there is a conflict that you see that we need to potentially move, please call Nancy and let her know, and we'll certainly work on that if we need to move something. And the last thing is not on the agenda, but something that we talked about this morning is, and this is not mandatory, but I would like to either maybe July the 14th or the 15th, if any of you would be interested in coming to a work session that afternoon sometime for us to kind of lay out what our rough draft of a final plan is, so you can see it and we can bounce it off of you guys, and you certainly can have some input. There's some things that you feel like we need to tweak a little bit before we put it out to the general public. And
That was July the 14th.
well, I'll lay those two dates. Those are the two dates that are best for us, either the 14th or the 15th. That gives us some time to work on it and try to get it in place, because that next week is when we're planning on putting it out. So if we've got to make some major changes or have some conversation, I want some time to be able to do that. So you can, if you want to contact Nancy, let us know, or can you
You
tell
just
us
let me
now
know.
what
We'll
date?
make, if you pick a date and we'll make it available. I think it's important.
How about the 15th? Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. What time? Early afternoon? You want it later?
Afternoon.
What day of the week is 15th?
That's Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I'm wide open. Doesn't matter.
3 o'clock? 2 o'clock?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock? Okay. 15th at 3 o'clock. Board work session. Okay. Thank you. Madam Chairman, that concludes my report.
All right. And now we have a motion to move into executive session. So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay. We will be moving into executive session for personnel, contractual considerations,